All right, I'm sitting outside Christian County Courthouse, and I just made like a 12-minute video, and apparently I didn't hit the record button. So, funny me. So, wanted to talk today about the national debt and how that applies to Social Security, and does it affect us? Right now the national debt is, I think, $38 trillion. That's what we owe. The GDP, that's the amount of total cost of goods and services this country provides, is around 30 trillion. So this is one of the first times in at least my lifetime, that our national debt has exceeded our GDP. And that number can be kind of misleading because GDP is not our revenue. Our revenue is, a percentage of that. That's what we get, taxes and, sometimes, I guess, tariffs. So that's, really, if you're only getting $5 trillion in tax revenue, and then you owe 30-something trillion, it's not one times GDP. It's really like 8 times what you're making. So imagine, if you make $50,000 a year and you owe $400,000, that can be, kind of daunting. So just that's really what the national deficit is. Now, how it applies to Social Security is, Social Security is a separate program. It has its separate trust fund. So the taxes collected for Social Security and Medicare are put in a fund, and then those are paid out according to how much you paid in. And Social Security has pretty much its entire existence run surpluses, which means it has brought in more than it is paid out. And but the government has borrowed from that. It's supposed to be used for Social Security, but they have borrowed from that, and then they've used that as their general funds. Now, in 2008, I think for one quarter during the Great Recession, the Social Security Trust Fund did have a deficit, but that was the next quarter it caught up and it was fine. But we owe almost $3 trillion to the Social Security Trust Fund. That's what we have borrowed. I know when I was in college, the amount that we borrowed from Social Security was a lot more. It was, we had about a $10 trillion deficit, but like $8 trillion we had borrowed from Social Security and Medicare. So, but that's not the case anymore, because Social Security, we've had as more people retired, less people paying, we've had to pay it out. So the surpluses are not quite what they used to be. And most of the debt that this country has is being held either by private individuals, they're being held by foreign countries. And the way that debt is accumulated is when the federal government needs money above and beyond tax revenue or anything else they bring in, they sell treasury bonds. So, you may have gotten a T-bill, treasury bond as a kid, for $100. What happens? Somebody pays, $65, $70 for it. It matures in 10, 15 years. You get your $100. And so there's an interest rate attached with that. So, that's really what the deficit is calculating. It's calculated in those outstanding treasury bills. So of our debt, about 20 plus trillion is in the hands of foreign companies and private individuals. And so that causes a lot of concern, because before we just owed it to ourselves, so it wasn't really a big deal. It's like, well, we borrowed it from Social Security, like, what are they going to do? But when you start owing it to other people, that's why your credit rating goes down. It becomes a real problem for the country, because now 14% of our tax revenue is paid just on the interest. And if you were to, every single person in the country were to, and that includes people retired, that includes newborns, owes $114,000. That would have to be produced to cover our national debt. So if that gives you some kind of scale, when I was in college, it was, like 30,000, which was still a lot, but it was, somewhat manageable. So we're running into a few crises here about the national debt. The first thing is we're not going to be able to borrow from Social Security anymore, and we kind of really haven't as much, because that Social Security money has to be used for payouts for Social Security. You have less in the workforce. You got more people retiring. You got the boomer generation retiring, so that's hit it pretty hard. And then but the spending keeps going up, so you got to get the money somewhere, and the way to get the money, you got to get it from third party individuals and countries, and they can influence us. They can crash our economy if they redeem all those T-bills, and it can cause a real problem. So that's where we are right now. Hopefully moving forward we can tackle that issue. I know the prior generation, the 70 and 8-year-old politicians that are just kind of shitting on our generation, is passed the buck, and so hopefully my generation, the X's and Y's, will fix it. But if we fix it, our country's going to be in not great shape. But somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to stand up and say, this got to stop. And until we do that, we're just, it's at some point in time, the rug gets pulled out underneath it, and the Ponzi scheme's exposed, and this is, it's gonna be bad when it happens. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but we've gotten now where we've exceeded GDP for the first time in, like I said, in my lifetime, and maybe in the entire country's history. But so just want you all to think about that, just kind of explain to you how the national debt works, what happens, how they borrow the money, who they borrow it from, and hope you all have a good day, and hope that didn't impress you too much. But I think it's an issue that does need to be addressed. And America's got a spending problem, and we need to stop it. So have a good rest of your day. Any questions, comments, leave down below. You all got my number. Take care.